What's the perfect job for somebody who's neurodivergent? Hi, I'm Brett, the Audio Boss, and on this channel we talk about ADHD and autism in the workplace. I'm Brett, I have autism and ADHD and over 12 years of leadership training and experience. This is a topic that has been a variation of many viral memes going around in the autistic, ADHD, AuDHD social media spaces about what's the perfect job for someone who has ADHD or autism. And spoiler alert, there is not really an answer for this question because it's not about the job. It's about us. It's about you. It's about me. It's about us as individuals. It's about figuring out where both our special interests and our strengths within our neurodivergence work for the job environment, the workplace, the colleagues, the managers, all of that stuff. So we're just going to take a minute now in this video, and I'm going to break down some ways to approach finding, let's just say, an ideal job, because no job truly is perfect, but an ideal job when matching up our neurodivergent strengths. First and foremost, we are not a monolith. Those of us with ADHD and autism, AuDHD, so I can't speak for everyone, and to that point, not any one job is going to be perfect for everyone with ADHD, everyone with autism, or everyone with autism and ADHD. There are many folks that I'm friends with who are autistic who love doing spreadsheets. I hate spreadsheets. I hate everything about spreadsheets, but one of my absolute dearest friends is a genius with spreadsheets. And so I go to her for ideas about how to do spreadsheets because I have a hard time starting spreadsheets. I have a hard time maintaining spreadsheets. I have a really good friend who I used to work with. One of their sole functions of their job was to do the information pumping into the spreadsheet. And that is project management, or at least that's a layer of project management. So if you like spreadsheets, project management might be a perfect job for you. So that's just sort of a small example of where we're not the same. So not any meme or any information on the internet can tell you what the perfect job is for all of us, because that's just not a thing. How do we find a job that is going to work for our neurodivergence? If whenever possible, what I've always found to be successful for myself, the people I coach, and my colleagues is, where can I find something that is both a special interest or has the spark of a special interest that could potentially lead to a monotropism. Now, the difference between special interest and monotropism: special interest is something where I'm happy to spend my time in that thing. I really like that thing. I'll spend a lot of time there. But a monotropism is sort of like a special interest at the next level. Monotrope is essentially you've become such an expert on that special interest. You've dove so much in, you just consume everything, you love consuming everything. It's like a huge part of your life that you're essentially an expert on that because you've spent so much time researching, learning, living in that space. Whenever I coach people coming straight out of college, or people looking for their first job, or even entry-level people, or even those of us who are switching careers and moving from one job to another, I like to start with, well, what's something that holds your interest? What's something that you like to do? What's something that you want to do? What's something that you have an interest in? And it doesn't even necessarily have to be a special interest, but it has to be something that you want to do. One of the things I knew early on when I was coming out of college and high school and, starting to think about my early career was, I knew I had to find something that I really enjoyed doing, that I wanted to do, so that I could go to work every day to do those things. And if I didn't find that thing, I knew I was going to be bored out of my mind if I didn't find some sort of a career where I could have fun and play and do the things that I want to do that were in the realm of things that held an interest for me. That was always true for me in school. And of course, later I found out that was a part of my autism and my ADHD. So for me, I've actually switched careers a number of times. I switched careers within broadcast journalism. I started off as a news photographer, and I briefly was a director, and I ran audio, and I did all those different things behind the scenes. And then for a while, I was a producer. And then for a while, I was an on-camera reporter. And then eventually, I left the whole journalism world behind. And then I moved into the corporate workspace, became a social media manager, and then became a content specialist and a content strategist, and then produced podcasts and audiobooks, and eventually became a publisher and all those different things. So I chased the layers of special interest, and I pulled on different threads so that I could find different things to keep my interests going. And that opened up a lot of career opportunities for me. What is the first thing that we can maybe make a list of things that we have an interest in? And then where are the entry points? Those entry points allow us different places to enter into a role, a company, or a job, or a career. It could be entry level, depending on what our expertise level is or experience level is in that thing, or it can be moving up to a higher thing. This is where I also try to manage expectations, both for myself and people that I coach, because it's a matter of thinking about, well, where is that entry point? Have I got experience on that I can put on a resume, that I can speak to, that I can explain? Have I only done that offline? Have I only done that privately? Where are the ways that I can talk about the experience that I have? You might be an expert on that thing, but doesn't necessarily mean you're going to become sort of a senior manager or a senior leader on that topic if you haven't had other career or experience in that work field to build up onto. So moving to the next area of that, okay, let's say we have our special interest. Now it's a matter of finding a workplace and a work environment that is going to be a good fit for what we need. And all of our needs are going to be different. My needs for my autism and ADHD are going to be completely different from your needs for your autism and your ADHD, or whatever your specific needs are. But it's important that we have some introspective interest in ourselves to sort of figure out, okay, what do I need? There's oftentimes a question that comes up in job interviews. What do you need to be successful within this role? This question used to be very stressful for me because I didn't really know how to answer this when I was younger and first starting out. But since becoming a manager, and since learning more about my autism and my ADHD, I actually love this question, because this question allows me to not necessarily disclose. You don't have to disclose. That's not necessary. You don't have to. But it's an opportunity to say, here's what I need to be successful in my job, or here's what I need to be successful in that task. And that's a question that will always serve you well in the corporate world, but it'll serve you pretty much in every job that you're in, corporate or non-corporate, because what you're speaking to is things like, I need some quiet time so that I can focus on this, or I need some music on in the background while I listen to this, or I need to work in a group, or I need to work alone. Whatever the different things are, they're like accommodations. It's essentially like describing what accommodations you need without asking for accommodations. It's kind of like quiet accommodations. What are the specific things that help me to perform really well? I like to have a lot of space before I start something so that I have thinking time, so that I can get my mind in right. I also like to verbal process. I like to think out loud with a colleague and a trusted colleague. But once I get to the place that I've talked it through enough with my colleague, I then want to work completely alone so that I can get all of my hyper focus in, and I can dive deep into that thing and I can just go. That's good for me, but that again may not be good for everybody else. And one of the things that I learned early on as a manager with ADHD and autism was the more we can create the space for people to get their needs met, the more successful they will be at getting the task or the job done, and done successfully. So anytime I can kind of articulate to a manager or something, hey, here's what I need to be able to get that done, or here's what I need to be successful on that project, and then itemize what those things are. And ideally, you don't want to make that list too long, but if you can itemize some of those things, that's going to help you. So when you're in the middle of a job interview, if you bring up those specific things, that then sends a message in the job interview, hey, this is what I need to be successful. Now, this is the critical part. If a job manager or an interviewer does not respond favorably to that, or they meet that with some resistance, or they don't like it, or things change in the job interview, well, then that's a sign. That's a yellow or red flag. Maybe this isn't the work environment you want to be in. But if they respond positively to that, and you can then have a dialogue about the work atmosphere and the work experience and the colleagues and the manager themselves and about how they like to work, then you can listen for how collegial this is. How am I going to work well with my colleagues? This is the meat of where you can find out more about a workplace when you're going through the job interview process, to find out how the manager is going to be, how people are like that, what's the place like. And that's where you can ask more questions about. Lightly talking about accommodations, you might be able to say accommodating, but we're not asking for accommodations. We're simply asking for descriptions and ideas and sort of more information about what the workplace is like, so that we can basically bring our strengths. And that's the other thing about this question. This is about talking about your strengths. It's not about saying, well, hey, I have this trouble, I have this problem, I need that. No. This is about, here's how I work best. This is where my strengths come through, and this is where my strengths can shine if I can do this kind of environment when I work. This is also a great segue to a conversation to say then back in a job interview, or during even a conversation about a task or a project or something, how is the success going to be measured? Now that's really helpful for me, because I want to know how that measurement is going to exist, so that I know if I'm doing the job right or the task correctly. I want to know, how are they going to communicate that to me? I could be off on a hyper focus thinking that I'm doing something right, when it turns out I could be doing it entirely wrong. How are we going to figure that out together? How's that going to be measured? How are we going to talk about it? How's that going to come up in collaboration? That's a good time to sort of evaluate when you're going to check in on the status of a project so that you can find out more about, am I meeting the success? Am I on the right path? Are we at the criteria for what we need to do? That's where that critical communication comes in. And that's one of the things we have to be flexible about, is making sure that there's space for communication. And that way we're not too lost in a hyperfocus that we could go off on a whole different path for something that doesn't need to be done. Take some time to get curious about what you specifically need to be successful in a job. What do you need to do a task or a job well? When you think about your work life, when you think about your work day and your work schedule, and when you think about projects and stuff, really sit with yourself and ask, what do I need? What are those things that I need? What makes me happy when I'm getting things done? What makes the job or the task feel like it's been successful in getting it done? Or what's something that's really annoyed me? What's something that sort of, trips me up or gets in my way or frustrates me, or, frustrates me so that I can't get the job done, or takes me away from my focus or something, or my hyper focus, so that I can't do that. So now we're looking at, what are our special interests? And what are the things that help us do our job really well? What do we need in that work environment? So those are 2 big buckets. The next big bucket is, for a successful job for someone who's neurodivergent, is the communication and the relationship between a manager. How much communication do you need? How much communication do they need? And where can you kind of meet in the middle? I was a manager that would like to check in a lot with people, and I would check in frequently, or I would check in less frequently if I knew that they were people who could kind of go off, work on their own, and didn't really need a lot of oversight. And that's great, because we want to be treated as adults at work, and we want to be able to know that our boss is treating us like an adult. So one of my anxieties as a manager was not knowing where things were at so that I could report up. So sometimes when I needed to check in with people, it could have been perceived as micromanaging. But if I was communicating why I needed to check in and why I needed to check in more frequently, most of the time I found people were really understanding and accommodating for understanding where those questions were coming from. It's always about transparency with communication and understanding. So that way people don't feel micromanaged. If you can set those up before the project starts going, like, hey, why don't you work for a couple of days on that and then let's just check back in? Or hey, why don't you take a week to go work on that thing and then check back in? Or a few hours, and then we'll check back in at the end of the day. Kind of like that ADHD hack of always setting alarms all the time on your phone. It's sort of that, but in terms of like making sure you're popping your head up and checking in with whoever you need to check in with to make sure that the project is going along as it should be and that communication is happening. When we have too little communication, that can be risky. That could be a recipe for disaster, because people could be misunderstanding. There could be mismanaged ideas, and we aren't managing our expectations the right way. And ultimately, that's what it's coming down to. How do I get my needs met in whatever job I'm going to, but also so that I can be happy? And so that if I want to work on my special interests and I want to have a monotropism, how do I both have a job that helps me be happy and enjoy those things and help me get my needs met so that I can enjoy my special interests, I can enjoy my job, and I can enjoy that monotropism if I want to. Always feel free to ask a lot of questions during a job interview. This is your place to remember that, yes, you're selling yourself, you're telling them about you, but it's also their opportunity to sell the business, the company, the manager, the team to you as well. So you want to be listening for all of those things during the job interview. Certainly I always do, to make sure that's going to be a good fit and to make sure that my neurodivergent needs are going to be met. And that, to me, is how we find the recipe for getting a really great job for someone with neurodivergence. I hope this has been really helpful. I hope it is helpful. I hope you can make some questions. I've typed all of this up as a Substack post. You can check that out on my Substack or on my website, audiboss.com. And this is also available as both an audio podcast and a video on YouTube. So depending on where you're watching or listening or reading from, this is available in whatever format will work for you. I hope that's been helpful. Please check out some of the other videos and audio podcasts while you're here. I'm Brett, the Audi Boss. Be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps my channel grow. And if you have a question or a topic that you'd like for me to cover, let me know in the comments below. I'm super responsive to the comments, and I do check in frequently on those. Thanks for watching, and I hope this has been helpful.